What is up, YouTube? So I'm going to do a short video on this new welder I just got. Um, Obviously to do the floor pans in my Mustang if you've been following along. So this is a titanium 170 welder from Harbor Freight. I did a bunch of research, to each their own. I looked at Lincoln's, I looked at Miller's because obviously they're the cream of the crop, but from reading the reviews on this titanium, they also make a smaller one. It's a 140. That's only 120. This is a 120 and 240. There is a inverter to switch the voltage in here. So with this kit, you obviously get 30 tips and this regulator if you're running shielding gas. It is a little cheap. It's one of the complaints I have about it. The only other negative thing I have is, which I mean, you can redo this. They sell different ground cables, but it's a little chintzy. But you know, it's all from Harbor Freight. So, and then the gun's pretty nice. It's not too bad. I did some practice welding with it. I don't like that this is not a screw-on. This is just a pull-off. But like I said, you get what you get. Not everything's going to be perfect. So I got some extra spool of a 30 wire to do. I'm going to be welding subframe connectors. I have 025 in there now. And then I got nozzle dip. Make pliers if you're a beginner welder. I mean, everyone's seen a welder helmet that's in there. It's a titanium auto tinting. So let's open it up here. It does kind of cool. It does tell you if you're ready, depending on what metal you're welding, thickness, and wire you're using. It'll kind of, if you're using 025 and you're welding 24 gauge, you want your wire speed at 90, your voltage at 14, and your inductance at 3 to 5. So this is your wire speed, this is your amps, and this is your inductance. This switch here is if you want to pull the trigger once, it'll arc, you let go, it'll stop arcing. If you switch it down to 4T, you'll pull the trigger, let off the trigger, it'll start welding, pull the trigger, let off the trigger, it'll stop welding. There's a little switch right in here. This is if you're running an aluminum spool gun that is sold separately. This is your gas line in here. There's an adapter for the 10 to 12 pound spools, which is what I got on here now. Here's your wire feed. This is your tensioner here. If you're running 025, you want it between 4 to 5. You take your spool gun, turn it on, put it against a block of wood, unspool it. If it bends a little bit, it means your tension's pretty good. If it doesn't, you want to add a little bit more tension. There's the wheel in here. You want to make sure it's the right one for the wire you're using. And then it's pretty simple. If you're running gas, shielding gas like I am, you want this on the positive and your negative on the negative. If you're running flex core, the negative goes over to the positive and this goes over the negative. That's just a few things there. In the back here, you have your plug, your gas, your regulator. I run 15 on my gauge. This is a 60 cubic foot bottle. I got a spare 20 foot cubic bottle over there. I'm trying to think. This is your on off. This is your switch from 240 volts to 120. I will tell you, I did not know this. This is a dryer cable. When you take this off, it does not fit 220. For me to do that right now, I'd have to put the phone down. But it's like the dryer cable, because I have a 220 line. Right there, it will not fit that. So you'll need a 220 adapter to a dryer adapter. And then you can run that. Pretty much everything you see here is from Harbor Freight. The gloves, just not the best welds. The wire, This welding cart, my welding helmet, not the welding bag, the welder itself, the bottles from air gas. There's a few things I did not get for this yet that are on the way. Right on here, you can put 2 little cleaning tips. There's these little red circles, they clip here, that cleans the wire, and then the other one slightly oils the wire. So it'll help keep your wire clean and oiled. When you're putting a spool on, make sure you have tension on it or it will unravel. Don't do that. When you're putting it into the gun, you loosen this, you pop this out, you manually feed it by hand through here. It'll pass over the wheel, go through here, and you want to keep putting it through the gun until about 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, whatever. And then you take this gun, you wring it all the way straight out, and then you run the spool. So that is pretty much to go over the welder here. So we will quick show you. Here it is a little loud. There's a fan in it. You have your working light. So when you're on the trigger, this will light up. This alarm is a thermal overload alarm. If you overheat this welder, it will trip and stop running. The fan will continue to run, and then that's your power. In your manual and also right here, it gives you your duty cycles. So if you're running at 120 VAC at 40% use, 90 amps for 10 continuous minutes, you want 4 minutes of welding, 6 minutes of rest, hypothetically. What will happen is if you overheat it, this light will light up. It will not allow you to weld. The fan will continue going. You obviously don't always want that to happen. So that's just thoughts there. So you always want to make sure it's selected to whatever power you're using. Right now we're using 120. This is a little loud with the fan. You flip her on. It'll do a check. The alarm light comes on, the work light comes on, the power light comes on. It'll kick off, it'll clear, it'll go to power. And then anytime you hit the gun, the work light will light up and you'll be good to go. So this is kind of what I have set up right now for welding my floor pan. I'm fairly new to this, so I'm still learning as I go. I did some test welding. So my wire speed is right in between 6 and 7 at 20.5. My amps are in between 4 and 5 at 15.5, and my inductance is at 4. And like I said, when you're welding for a little bit and you've been hard on it all day, don't just go and turn it off. Just put your gun back, let it cool off with the fan for a little while, and you just come back and flip it off. It'll usually take like 10 seconds to flip off, and then it will flip off like so. Always get like some pieces of scrap metal. So this is part of my seat pan for my Mustang. As you can see, my first welds were not very good. We were messing with the wiring speed. This is where we eventually got to, way too hot. You can see how that's scorched out there. Still a little too hot. I'm no professional welder. But as we started messing with the wire speed, this is kind of what we got. Pretty good for a novice welder. I also, not that I clamped this really well, I did a little bit of a spot weld. It does hold. I just wanted to see if it would burn a hole in the bottom of it. So, and then I ground away for the ground cable. So, mess around, find a scrap piece of metal like I did. I'm no expert welder by any means of the imagination. So, there's a box that comes in. Just remember, if you're running flux core wire, you need to switch, your polarities up, switch your tips up. Tips are pretty consumables. So, for example, this is your flux core tip. This comes with the welder. And this is your 0.35V. You also have a K on here. The K is a little bit wider. Can't really see on the camera. but this is the wheel you switch out if you're running the heavier wire. If you're running floor pans, you want to use 0.25. If you're welding like my subframe connectors, I'm going to use 0.03. So that comes with the kit. I ordered some extra tips here. What is this? This is 0.30. You got a bunch in there, and then 0.25 for your contact tips. These tend to burn out, clog up. I also got welding tip cleaners as well to clean the welding tip. Also, when you're doing the regulator, I did not do this yet. It did leak a little bit. I'm going to Teflon tape it and make sure it's good. So that is essentially the Harbor Freight titanium MiG 170. I haven't really ran it through its paces yet. I watched a bunch of other YouTube videos. I haven't heard many complaints besides the tips, a little bit of a chintzy ground cable. It is kind of cool. You can run an aluminum spool gun on here. I like the digital readout. I'm a novice welder. It helps you dial it in better when you're running welding the thinner metal like those seat pans in here. So I might put a small video up of when my girlfriend gives me a hand here. She can run the camera. Maybe I'll do a small video on welding in some floor pans, how the welder works, things of that nature. So that's pretty much it. This is just a small little review of my Harbor Freight welder. I have a lot of Harbor Freight stuff. Like I've said before, I mean, this is Harbor Freight. I haven't had a problem with it. Air hammer and my impact gun. My McGraw air compressor's Harbor Freight. It's done the job. Harbor Freight engine stand. So, till next time, YouTube. Happy holidays. Thank you.